What's going on? You This is the King Cam Ujumbe Podcast and Ujumbe means message, and we're going to talk about the secrets of the Medjay. Yeah, the secrets of the Medjay, the Kushite warriors who protected the Nubian Pharaohs. Now, last week we discussed the kings of Napata or Napata. So I decided to split this episode in half. So this is part two of this little mini session here, the secrets of the Magi Kushite warriors who protected the Nubian pharaohs. Get you something to write on, something to write with, and I'd like to welcome you back. This is our Echoes of Nubia mini series, and so we actually stood last week. We stood before the mountains of Amun and followed the fire path of the Napatan kings, but no king walks alone. Nobody is rolling solo, even though there is one leader at one time, but there is a staff, there is a entourage, right? So behind every divine throne, there is a shield. But behind the throne, there is a shield, a group of warriors trained not only in combat, but in sacred code, in sacred custom. Okay, so today we're going to walk with the Magi today. So they are border guards, they are the scouts, and they were the royal intelligence, the spiritual enforcers, and the sacred bodyguards, right? So they was forged in heat, and they was basically made in a hostile environment. So they were used to pressure. You see what I'm saying? And so they was forged in Nubian desert, the burning sands, and they was tested by the Neteru and the ancestors themselves. So before there was a Meroe or Rome, there was the Magi. Okay. And so get this, Tasseti, remember Tasseti is called the land of the bow. And it wasn't just a cute name. They got down for real. All right. So let's go. So today we're going to answer some of these questions. What spiritual and cultural forces shaped the evolution of the Magi from tribal scouts into sacred enforcers of Ma'at? How did the Magi contribute to the rise of the Napatan kings and the stability of the 25th dynasty? Shout out to Sister Danita Smith. Check her out. She mentioned that the tw- uh, the 25th dynasty is to say is if they were in conjunction with Kemet. No, the kings of Kush, the kings of Nubia and Sudan had their own golden ages. They had their own situation going. Now there are times where they overlapped, but it's to say that they were part of the 25th dynasty is it to say that they didn't have dynasties of their own. See what I'm saying? So yeah, check it out. So what role does sacred geography such as Gabel Bakal play in the identity and authority of the Kushite warriors? Fourth, in what ways do the Medjay symbolize a model of African resistance, sovereignty, and ancestral order today? Now, so today, like I said, get you something to write on, something to write with. We're going to talk about the origins of the Medjay and the C group culture, the Magi as sacred agents, not mercenaries. See, that's another thing, another massive misconception where the Western world get a hold of it, get a hold of this information. They would say that the Magi were mercenaries for Kemet. No, they was their own military elite. They was on their own forces. So they had commanders of the Sacred Order. Yes, I have names. Yeah, I have a few names of the leaders of this group. Man, it's gonna be good. The Magi legacy in African warrior memory. Let's go. So this is, like I said, this is our Echoes of Nubia miniseries. We're gonna do this on Thursdays, um, almost every Thursday up until August, because August we'll move on to some other things such as it. We're gonna double down on Ethiopia. Where's that book? I think the book may be downstairs, um, but yeah, we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into some. We're still doing the sacred arc that connects Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush. But in August, we're going on Thursdays. We're going to do something different along those lines. All right, let's go. So, of course, is our pillars. Pillar one, Ethiopia, the source and sanctuary, which is our major pillar. That is the pillar. Pillar two, Kemet, the blueprint of sacred civilization, and we're on pillar three, Kush, Nubia, and the corridor of continuity. I do have a playlist. Check it out when you get a chance. And pillar four, the hidden codes, spiritual science symbols, and the esoteric legacy of Africa. All right, let's get it. So, long before they appeared in Egyptian records, The Medjay emerged from Nubian tribes, possibly linked to the C group culture. That's what they call it. They didn't have a name attached to it, but they knew the scientists and the archaeologists knew that this group was distinct from A and B group, which came before them, and they flourished between 2300 and 1500 before Common Era. The C group people inhabited the region between the first and the second cataracts in the Nile in what is today southern Egypt and northern Sudan. Get this, get this. Sudan is vast. And when we think about southern Egypt and northern Sudan, we kind of neglect the Khartoum area all the way down into Ethiopia. That was a whole different thing. And I've learned over the last year or so in studying and research, I've learned that Nubia or Sudan was not a singular group. It was not one massive group like in Kemet per se. It was several different groups. It was several different kings, and I learned we're gonna find out in the Stela of Pi. I have my little notes here that there were other kings and leaders in Kemet. Hold that thought. We're gonna get to that in a second. So now these this is the location. Okay, Brother Mo loves maps, so do I. But check this out. This is where they were. Okay, you see. This is Khartoum right here. You see that split right there in the Nile River where the blue Nile meets the white Nile. There's a split. That is Khartoum right there. That is a major cultural hub. But above that, okay, above that, that's the C group. And notice even in this area here, between say the these cataracts, between the second and the first, there's several groups here. Different kings, different attitudes, right? So we had the C group and the Magi right here, and then the Kerma culture. The Kerma culture. Wow. Okay, so now dealing with the origins, dealing with the people, they lived around over in and around over houses made of stone, mud brick, buried their dead, buried their ancestors in shallow circular graves with personal items, and left behind rich archaeological evidence of a culture that valued pastoralism and made and they traded and they had symbolic expressions. So these people weren't primitive in a sense, right? They had a high culture. When they have an understanding of the hereafter, yeah, they was already contemplating that. So like Dr. Ben, he said they didn't have like they wasn't just a civilization in a sense, they had a high culture. Okay, so they had houses, they had homes, and they had a military, right? Let's continue. So the C group, the C group pottery is distinct, often red and black polished ceramics with incense patterns, geometric designs, and occasional depictions of cattle and celestial symbols. Um, so they already possessed a knowledge of geometry and architecture. Yeah, they already had that knowledge. If they were making homes, and if they were making circular graves and places and even palaces, they knew geometry and architecture. Yeah, they knew that, right? So let's go. These people were skilled herders and had a close contact with both Egypt and deeper Nubian regions. Like I said, as I said before, they the southern part of Sudan had another different group. They had a different kind of leadership there. So we had the northern Sudanese there, and they had the southern Sudanese there, and so they had close contact with both Egypt and the Nubian region. Why? Because let me show you where they was at. They was in the middle of everything. And sad to say that right now that Sudan is still going through some things. They still have some infighting. Pray for peace in the Sudan area. Much love to the Nubian family out there. But yeah, it's happening. Why? Because the Western world do not want them to wake up as a group and realize how great they really are. Very similar, very typical to what's going on with us all over the world, right? Let's go. Okay, now, so they also had warrior tradition and likely performed ritualized combat and ancestral veneration ceremonies. It wasn't likely. Chances they when we get into some of this, you'll find out that they was I asked the question, were they connected more to the ancestors than say the people of Kemet? Yeah, yeah. They didn't play that. They didn't play those games. All right. So now, from this ancestral stock, the Medjay were born as an official group and as a clan based in the desert with deep spiritual knowledge and survival expertise. The name Medjay is likely referred to a region or an identity that and then later on it kind of evolved into a profession. So by the Middle Kingdom, by the time Sobekne Faru and many others were in power, the Magi were hired as desert trackers, scouts, and elite guards. But by the time the New Kingdom came, they transformed into a recognized military class. Okay, a brotherhood and sisterhood of elite warriors who protected tombs, police cities, guarded temples, and executed royal directives. And we're going to find out a little bit later about that too. They were not mercenaries in a modern sense. They were trusted agents of divine will. Okay, they're often bound by ritual, oath, and ancestral law. Okay, their code was military and metaphysical. Their code was military and metaphysical. All right, let's go. Strategy. The Magi was a hybrid kind of group. They mixed a lot of things. They had various skills, unique even by ancient standards. Remember that ancient Nubia or the Nile Valley culture was over 10,000 years old. So by the time Greece and Rome was already there, they was well advanced and they was ready, right? So here's some of the strategies. The Magi operated like a hybrid force, unique even by ancient standards. They had a royal intelligence, they had spiritual enforcers, and reconnaissance and combat. Yeah, they had a force recon. They, they had like Navy SEALs. They already had that. Okay, they had once again they had royal intelligence, spiritual enforcers, and reconnaissance and combat. Right. So here it is. Royal intelligence. They tracked movement across the eastern and western deserts, gathered intelligence on rivals and rogue elements, and protected the necropolises from tomb raiders and foreign invaders. So, when Mo asked the question, did the kings of Nubia, when they went to Egypt, did they kind of have an idea as to what was going on? Absolutely. They had a spiritual idea as to what was going on, but they also had some boots on the ground. You see what I'm saying? So the Magi was something serious, right? And I remember back in the day, you seen the movie The Mummy back in the day, and they had the Magi there as a protector of the the royalty in Egypt. They weren't they weren't just in Egypt. Okay, they was everywhere in the Nile Valley. See what I'm saying? And also, my favorite video game, Assassin's Creed Origin, the main character is a Magi. Okay, the main character is a Magi. So, pretty cool. Now let's continue. So, spiritual enforcers. Many Magi were trained in ritual purity and temple codes. We're gonna talk about that in a second. They enforce sacred law at sites like Karnak and Gabel Bakar. Their presence was a reminder that violating divine order carried both spiritual and physical consequences. They didn't play that. Our ancestors didn't play that, and at times we don't play that. Sometimes we don't mess with that. When it comes down to spirituality, when it comes down to the spirit of the matter, black people don't play, right? So they were the royal intelligence, they were spiritual enforcers, and they had a reconnaissance. They had reconnaissance in combat. Their warfare strategy was not based on brute force, but precision, adaptability, and rhythm with nature. They were precise. They was right and exact. They moved with the wind, used mirages to their advantage, and often fought in coordinated patterns. echoing Nubian drum signals and chants. Yeah, they were serious about that. They were serious about the work in which they were engaged. Okay. Um, we got to be like that. We got to be precise in what we're doing. We just can't just say, huh, it is what it is. No, be exact in your movements. Be exact with your intention, right? So the Magi, they had royal intelligence, spiritual enforcers, and recon, right? Now, they used okay, now they had a thing called the shield wall. Okay, before Rome and Greece, it was a battle formation, but it was also a living expression of sacred unity. A body of warriors moving with one will, one heartbeat, one spiritual charge. So they used the curved bow for long range precision, short swords and axes for close combat. Yeah, you're gonna get that work. If you get up close, yeah, this is the last time you're gonna see anything, right? Oval shields made from wood and leather, often decorated with clan symbols. They That's how they got down. Okay, and they had sacred markings and tattoos linked to lunar cycles, clan spirits, and divine patrons, and the Neteru. So it really depends on where they was from. The Magi was one group, but then just like any military, everybody came from everywhere. See what I'm saying? To get trained. So, yeah, they represented their own ancestors, their own families, right? So their training likely included vision quest, isolation rites in the desert, of course, physical endurance trials, and invocation to the ancestors and the Neteru like Amun, because Amun was a major deity in the south also. Maybe Set, because remember, Set before Osiris, Set in the south was a major patron, was a major Neteru. In times of crisis, Magi leaders may have consulted the oracles or the ancestors or even elders before engaging. In, in African custom, they can't express it enough. But in African custom, they always regarded the ancestors first. See what to do and what not to do. And I think the it's still important. Still important. Okay. And so they want to make sure that the warfare that they engaged in was sacred and not reckless. All right, let's go. Now, Kings of Napata, we talked about, here it is, the origins of the Magi and C group. Okay, we're going to talk about the service to the king, commanders of the sacred order, and we're going to have some notable Magi priests, Magi chiefs. We're going to get into that. There are some key individuals that wielded some power that were the leaders, the generals of the Magi. Man, and the Magi legacy in African warrior memory. Let's go. Service to the king. Service to the king. All right, but before that, I raised the question: who was or who is Queen Abar? Who is Queen Abar? Okay. In the previous episode, when we talked about the kings of Napata, towards the end, I asked the question: who's King Abar? Right? She was a Nubian queen. She was the niece of King Alar and married to King Piye, and she held a lot of titles. But most importantly, she was the mother of King Taharqa. Wow. She was the mother of this great man here. That's something. All right. So we can't express enough the impact of Shabaka and King Taharqa on the Nubian legacy. Matter of fact, that whole family was impactful. Okay. And so, yeah, Queen Abar was the mother of King Taharqa. Now, service to the king. Here we go. All right, so now dealing with that, under the 25th dynasty, the Kushite kings ruled in Egypt. The Magi were not, they were protectors of the physical realm and the spiritual realm, the throne, and the guardians of the throne of divine legitimacy, right? And so they likely played essential roles in Pi's military campaign northward, where discipline and loyalty mattered more than just numbers, right? Guarding the temple at Thebes and Napata, and securing royal coronation sites and sacred cash. Um, man, it, they were something. Okay, they were very powerful. Okay, but unlike this, what I noticed, unlike the priests of Amun and so many other factions in Egypt, the Magi didn't overstep their bounds. See what I'm saying? They knew exactly what their role was and what they was here to do. They didn't. They were there to protect the people of Sudan and Nubia, protect the throne, and that was it. But of course, we know the priests in Kemet, when things got shaky, they either finessed their way in or, or they just strong armed their way in, and then somebody reigned in their stead. So they put somebody in power or remove somebody from power, but not in Nubia. All right. Now, the victory Stela. In fact, the Piye's victory Stela hints at more than a conquest. It describes a spiritual war. He bathed and prayed and fasted before engaging in war. Okay, that kind of leadership required warriors to do the same. So, and the Magi fit the mold. Okay, now, but what did it say? All right, hit the like button. And if you want to know more about this, hit the like button and subscribe because we about to we about to get involved. See what I'm saying? So get ready. Let's go. Now, here we go. Let me see. I'm gonna read this. Okay. I have my notes here. And so and I will have the full check. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put the full article link in the description. Okay, so the regional year 21, the first month of inundation under the majesty of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Pai, beloved of Amun, living forever. The decree which my majesty has spoken. This person is speaking for and on behalf of the king. Okay, here what I have done in exceeding the ancestors. Okay, I am the king, the representation of God, the living image of Atum, who issued from the womb, marked as ruler, who is feared by those greater than he, whose father knew and whose mother perceived even in the egg that he would be ruler. The good God, beloved of the gods, the son of Ra, who acts with his two arms, Pi, beloved of Amun. Basically, he's giving the accolades like I was born to do this. Pi is saying, I was born to do this. As you can see the pictures, everybody's kneeling before him, right? So he says, one came to say to his majesty, the chief of the west, the count and chief of Bebet el Hagar, Tefnachit, is in a harpoon nome, the nome of Happy or the Nile Valley, in the marshy region of Kum el Hassin or Panub, and the nome of Memphis or Men Nefer. Okay, he was seized in the west. He was seized the. I'm sorry. He has seized the west, even in its entirety, from the northern coastal marshes of Lassit, sailing southward with a sizable army, while the two lands are united behind him. And the counts and rulers' estates are as dogs at his heels. They said, "Look," they said, "Pi is that guy, right?" And so, and it goes, and then he has a discussion with the chiefs, with the leaders. He said, then His Majesty sent the word to the counts and generals who were in Egypt, the commander Parin and the commander Nemasekiti, and every commander of His Majesty who was in Egypt. Proceed in battle formation. They got the word. They said, look, folk acting different, acting all reckless, we're going to engage. Okay, proceed in battle formation, engage in combat, encircle the beleaguer, capture its people, its herds, its ships upon the river. Do not allow the cultivators to go forth to the fields. Do not allow the plowmen to plow. Yeah, we're done with this. It's time to go to work. So he sent word to his leaders, his generals, his captains to go ahead and engage. So that lets us know that the Magi was already in Egypt. They was already in camp. They was already ready to roll. See what I'm saying? Man. And so he sent his army, right? He sent his army forging them, charging them forcibly. Do not attack at night. He gave them a rule. He gave them regulation. If you're going to attack, don't do it at night. Why? You should fight when there's sight. Announce the battle to him from afar. Let him know, hey, we about to throw hands. They was still cordial about it. They were still respectful. They said, look, you see us coming, right? And so he goes fight when he says, if further his supporters are in another city, let one wait for them. So you don't fight alone. Hmm. He said, let me say this again. He said, if further his supporters are in another city, let one wait for them. Don't fight by yourself. The counts or the leaders whom he has brought to support him and trusted Libyan troops. So they are also cool with the Libyan army. Yep. They had a they called the trusted Libyan troops. So they trusted them. Let one announce battle to them in advance, saying, "O you whom we do not know, how to address and mustering the troops, yoke the best steeds of your stable, line up in battle formation. We don't know you, but we can't trust you because the king said so. Okay, be informed that our moon is the God who sent us." So this was one we said it before. This was a spiritual battle. They're trying to save the soul of Kemet. They're trying to do a hard reset. And in a few minutes, we're going to find out how split up Kemet was. There was kings and leaders everywhere in Kemet. There was no such thing as instability in Kemet in the 25th dynasty. Not legit. So that's why Nubia had to get involved. Okay. And even when he goes on to say, purify yourselves in the river before you go out here and fight, before you go to Thebes, before you go to Karnak, clothe yourself. He said, purify yourself in the happy river, clothe yourself in the best linen, lay down the bow, withdraw the arrow. Do not boast of greatness as a possessor of strength. The mighty has no strength in ignorance of Amun. He said, don't boast in your own power. Right now, cleanse yourself, purify yourself, put your weapons down. Let's 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 uh let's deal with the sacred first. Let's deal with the ancestors first. For he makes the broken arm strong. Thus do multitudes turn tail to the few. Okay. He says, sprinkle yourselves with the water of the altars. You should kiss the ground before him, and you should say to him, give us passage. Before you go into this other area, because remember, Thebes and Karnak and Waset, all these places, Ipi Asut, all these places were still sacred. All these, even though the people there in Egypt didn't see it as sacred, they did. So before we get into this, we're going to we're gonna basically go to church. We're gonna worship, and then we're finna go to work. This was not only a physical battle, but a spiritual battle, right? And so they placed themselves. So in response, they placed themselves on their bellies. They bowed before the king, saying, "It is your name that will serve as our strong arm." So they agreed. Okay. So it says, "No army." That goes on to say, "No army profits whose commander is a coward." No army profits whose commander is a coward. Man. And so when they was making their way to Thebes, they had a meeting. Okay. Because as the armies was going up into Egypt, the king was moving up also. Okay. And so here's the account of the kings of Lower Egypt. That is the Delta area. That is the northern part of Egypt, right? King Namlat, King Iput, the chief of Ma, Sesnak of Busaris, the great chief of Ma, and many others. There's a list of different kings and chiefs in Lower Egypt. That was a problem. Remember, we discussed the nomarchs, right? But by the 26th dynasty, everybody thought they was king. And Piye said, "Now we're gonna check that." And so they went into battle. Okay, they went into battle. and they met. They met with some of the kings, and being united, they aligned themselves, or the kings aligned with Pai, and they had an allegiance and subordinates at the heels of the great chief of the west, the rulers of the states of Lower Egypt, the prophet of Net, the lady of Sais, and many others. They went forth against him, and they made a great slaughter among them. They went to work after they went to church. Sunday they went to church, and then Monday they went to work. See what I'm saying? And so they slew numerous men among them together with horses and incalculable numbers. And it was a list of the slaughter. They even knew who was. They identified who was unalived in that war. But that it kind of phases out. And guess what? One of the kings fled upstream. King Namlot fled upstream to the south when he was told Hermopolis is faced with enemies from the troop of his majesty. The dude was a coward. Yeah, yes, sir. Dude was a coward. And then he went to Hermopolis while the troops of his majesty were on the river and the bank. So he went and tried to hide himself in one of the major fortifications. He left his troops out there. Remember what they said earlier. Remember, it said no army profits whose commander is a coward. Wow. So you're not a king, bro. You're a coward. So then they heard it and surrounded the Hari Nome. The reason some of these names I know you guys are catching. Some of these names we discussed before. The Hari Nome is one of my favorite images where we have King Menkare. You've seen it many times before when I had the little question segment. I had the little 4 or 5 questions, and King Menkare is standing between Heteru and the Hari Nome. Okay, that was personified as a woman, Hare Gnome. So here we are, the Hare Gnome right here. And so they surrounded the gnome on its 4 sides without letting those who would go out, nor letting those who want to enter. They locked it down. Okay, they sent word explicitly to report to the majesty of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, the beloved of the moon, giving life, detailing every attack. They said, "Look, we set camp, and we're going to send a report." This was a this was a military situation here. You see this in modern times, but in ancient times they was doing this. Our ancestors had a military power, and they were communicating up and down the battlefield. Okay, and so of course they sent word to the king, and the king moved. He moved further up. It's like chess, right? He moved further up, and then they talked about they fought against another king, okay, and they defeated him, and then Hermopolis threw itself upon his belly. Hermopolis, they personified the city. They said the city bowed before this the king. Okay, pleading before the king of Lower Egypt, while messengers came and went, bearing everything beautiful to behold, gold of every sort, precious gemstone, clothing by chest, and a diadem which had been on his brow, the wajet, okay, and inspired respect of him. So then, so remember who ran into that city, right? King Namlat. Yeah, he ran up in that thing. He was hiding. He sent his wife. I can't make this up, bro. He sent his wife and went before to implore the other royal wives, okay, and the other royal daughters, and said, "Come to me, royal wives, royal daughters, and sisters. May you appease Horus, Lord of the palace, whose wrath is great, whose vindication is grand. Cause that he behold, still respect me." It's not gonna work, bro. That's not how it goes. You are a coward. Okay. And so, and then they were, and then there's a response because it kind of breaks up. Okay. The translation breaks up. It said, "Who your mother? Who has guided you? Who's guided you? Who then has guided you?" They basically saying, "Who's telling you this? This doesn't make sense." And so basically, they saying their allegiance now is with King Piye. His Majesty then sailed northward to the opening of the canal beside Alum, and he found per second I can't pronounce it per second Zepari with ramparts heightened. So that was the house, you know what I'm saying? It was a location. It was fortified. Now, the Majesty sent word to them saying this. Okay, he says, O living dead, O living dead, O miserable wretches, O living dead, if the moment passes without opening to me, behold, you belong to the tally of the fallen. He told that city, he said, look, if you don't bow to me, you will be numbered among the tally of the fallen. That's like who's in it, Pirates of the Caribbean, do you feel dead? Like, wow, you would be numbered. You say, okay, keep playing if you want to. I have the Medjay here, I have my generals here. We're not playing with y'all. It says, such is one subjected to the royal punishment. Do not bar the gates of your life so as to confront the slaughter block of this day. Don't don't do that. Don't bar the gates. Do not desire death so as to hate life. Going against us is suicide. This dude was gangster. Okay. And so, but after much discussion and much contemplation and a lot of devastation, they agreed. So he dealt with that cowardly king Namlat of Hermopolis, right? Then here come the chief of Ma. Okay, he said, "Look, he had a meeting. He said, there's two things. He said, two ways are in front of you. Then his majesty, so the king, the chief of Ma, his troops of his majesty entered without slaying anyone. So they said, look, we did enough. We put enough work in. We're gonna have this meeting first. He was still King Pi was still diplomatic about the situation. Okay, and so the men, the treasurers sealed possessions while the treasuries were assigned to the treasury. So they went in, they start gathering stuff. They start getting the stuff for the king, right? And then he saw the endowment of his father Amun Ra, Lord of the thrones of the two lands. His majesty then went sailing northward, and he found that the median of the house of Sakar, the Lord of illumination, had been closed. So he already knew spiritual Egypt was bankrupt. He already knew the problem. But a lot of these sacred sites, these sacred temples were closed. Nobody was doing the work. Nobody was venerating the ancestors or anything. So he sees that. Okay. And so he said he had a meeting. He said, look, after reopening these temples and everything, he had a meeting. He said, then the majesty sent word to them saying, behold, two ways are before you. Choose as you wish. Open you will live, close you will die. You have a choice. I'll give you a choice. My majesty would not pass by a closed city. Okay. So they opened to him directly. They said, look, said, if you remain closed, if you're gonna have problems. But if you open and agree with us, you'll be all right. So they opened the fortification. They threw themselves. They bowed to worship him and everything. So the chief of Ma, he said, "Look, you got it, bro. I'm not gonna play with you like that. I'm not gonna do that." And so then he goes further up. He goes to Mennefer. He goes to Memphis, where the priesthood of Ptah is. Okay, and they had their armies. Okay, and he said, "Behold, Memphis is filled with troops comprising of all the elite of Lower Egypt. Now we got to fight. Now we got to fight." So the king of Nubia pushed his way up into he passed Waset. He's now into Memphis or Mennefer, right? That's where the stronghold is. That's where, because remember, a lot of these kings were from Lower Egypt. That is the now Delta. So they brought their military down to there like it was a meeting point. Now it's finna go down. He said the lead of Lower Egypt with barley, emmer, sort of grain and granaries. It is protected by a stronghold. They bunker down. Okay. A great battlement has been built as a work of skillful craftsmanship. The river encircles its east, and fighting would not be found there. The stables were filled with oxen. They was ready. He then mounted upon a horse as he did not trust his chariot. Yeah, he got to move around. He got to, he had a horse. He had to move around. He then went northward in fear of his majesty. So we have another coward. So we have the chief of Sais, right? He got on a horse because he didn't think that chariot could move around fast enough, right? He went northward in fear of his majesty as the land lightened as the day went on. Uh, his majesty arrived in Memphis. Then he went further north. Okay. Then his majesty saw that it was strong and enclosures walls high. Okay. So guess what he said? He said, "Let us lay siege to Memphis. Behold, his army is numerous." While others were saying, "Make a ramp against it, so we can elevate the grounds in this rampart." So they said he had a meeting. He said, "Okay, should we?" This was strategy. He said, "Should we take it straight on, or they were saying let's build ramps against it so we can elevate the ground. Let's put together a siege platform." They was about to engage in siege warfare. They was about to have battering rams and whatnot and knock the walls down in Memphis. You see siege warfare in medieval times and all that. They was already doing that. They said, okay, all right, we see the walls, okay. All right, let's do it. Siege warfare, erecting mass and using sails, and let's divide it by means of every side. They was going to take almost every major door and they was going to just knock them down. And then so the king he goes on to speak, "As I live, as Ra loves me, as my father Moon favors me, I have discovered that this has happened for it by the command of Amun." This is the divine act right here. Okay. And then so he talked, he goes on to say, "Let them open for him from afar. They do not place a moon in their hearts." That was y'all, Memphis being fortified like that, by being isolated, and all these bombardments and all these walls was basically symbolic, showing, basically confirming that they was not letting the ancestors and the Netzeru in their hearts. So okay, we'll fix that. Yeah. He said, they said they did not place Amun in their hearts, nor did they know what he has commanded. He has done it expressly to give evidence of his wrath and to cause that his grandeur be seen. He said, y'all gonna see this. Yeah, they did not regard the Netzeru. They had all they didn't regard the Netzeru, the ancestors, or nothing. This is the 25th dynasty. Egypt is in trouble. And so they went and they took Memphis. Okay. And then there's some other indications right here where he goes further and he goes into the Heliopolis. And when he went to the Heliopolis, okay, when he goes there, he goes into the temple. Okay, he goes in the temple of Ra. Okay, they call it the estate of Ra, or he purified himself in cool water, presenting to him bouquets of flowers and bringing him. They brought him amulets of life, mounting the stairway with the great window. So they reset that temple. Okay, he stood alone. He went in there because there's levels and different spaces. So he went to the Jesaru. It was sealed up. The holy of holies, or the most holy place, was sealed up. It was sealed. He broke the seal. and he went in. Okay. He said, I myself have inspected the seal, no other can enter into it. Okay. And so this was a spiritual battle. This was a spiritual war. And towards the end, once this was all done, because he still was going, he was still going to work. But once this was done, check this out. Then the ships were loaded with silver, gold, copper, and clothing, and everything of Lord Egypt, every product of Syria, every instance of Taneter, or God's land, which is Somalia. His Majesty then sailed southward. He went back home. Yeah, with his heart gladdened, and all those on both sides of him shouting, the west and the east took up announcements shouting around about his majesty. Almighty ruler, Piye, almighty ruler, you return having conquered Lower Egypt, making bulls into women. Happy is the heart of the mother who bore you, and of the male whose seed is within you. Those in the Nile Valley praise her, the cow who gave birth to a bull. You are eternal, your victory enduring, O ruler, beloved of Thebes and Wasek. That is the Stela of Piye. It was a spiritual battle. He once he got there, he it was confirmed that Egypt has fell off. All right. So, but I have the full article in the description. Check it out. Let's go. So it is likely that the Magi, while it was acted as royal guards for the Napatan temples, envoys between kings and southern priesthood, keepers of coded communication across the Nile Valley. So they had, before I get to that, their loyalty was legendary, right? And their presence was astonishing. But unlike fiction, the real Magi were complex agents of sovereignty, blending warfare with wisdom, silence with discipline, and strategy with sacred law. We just talked about how they had siege warfare. They took over Memphis. That's crazy. Even after the fall of the 25th dynasty, the Magi's tradition were echoed in other warrior orders, and their legacy lived through memory, tomb inscriptions, and resistance movements. So here we go. The chiefs. Did I get to the high? There is a structure. There is a hierarchical structure. I'm sorry. The chief of the Magi, regional or national. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about some of these chiefs, right? There's deputy chiefs. So there's a hierarchy, right? There's a structure. Deputy chiefs, elite patrols or guards, temple assignments, and border units. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more if you're enjoying this content. And share, by the way, share with somebody that you think may enjoy it. But yeah, there was a hierarchy, there was a system, a structure. There was a chief of the Magi, be it regional or national, deputy chiefs or officers, elite patrols or guards, temple assignments, and border units. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, service to the king. All right, service to the king. So we talked about the origin of the Magi. We about to talk about service to the king. Well, we talked about service to the king, commanders of the sacred order, notable Magi chiefs, and the Magi legacy. Let's continue. Chiefs of the Magi. All right, here we go. We got some heavy hitters. The group was already serious. Now we're going to talk about their leaders, right? But before we get to that, though, I got a question. Before we get to the Chiefs, I have a question. Now, would you rather speak every African language or read every ancient script? Which one you want? Speak every African language or read every ancient script? Like and comment below. Let me know. Speak every African language or read every ancient script. Like and comment below. Let's get it. Now, did you know that July 16th is my birthday? Yeah, it is my birthday. And I'll be uh I'm 45. See what I'm saying? So July 16th is my birthday. So I really appreciate you guys for being here and kind of celebrating with me. But if you are so led, I have a Cash App or a super thanks, a super chat. So, but I really appreciate it. But yeah, July 16th is my birthday. So yeah, let's go. Now, Chiefs of the Medjay. As Medjay evolved from tribal scouts into formalized elite force, a new rank emerged, the Chief of the Medjay, or in ancient Egyptian, the Harimede. Okay, this title appears in records in the Middle Kingdom and onward. Okay, designating a high-ranking leader entrusted to both military and sacred duties. Right. So the chiefs were generals. They were responsible for organizing patrols and desert reconnaissance, protecting royal tombs in places like Waset and in Valley of the Kings and in Nubia too, overseeing the Majai's presence at religious sites and coronation ceremonies, and maintaining the discipline and spiritual purity of the warrior class. As we mentioned so many times before, it wasn't just a physical thing; it was a spiritual thing. Okay, so some of these chiefs, in essence, these chiefs were guardians of both the state and cosmic law. So here it is: Jehuti Hotep, that's one; Ursur, which means power; and My Hepri. So we have three. While many individual chiefs their names are lost in history, we have a few: Jehuti Hotep, Ursur, and My Hepri. Okay, Jehuti Hotep. Let me Now, Jehudi Hotep is a known chief of the Medjay under Pharaoh Mentuhotep of the 11th dynasty. That was towards the Middle Kingdom. The Middle Kingdom, right? He is referenced in connection with the military campaigns in Nubia and maintaining control over desert regions. And in this book, if I have it, it is man, it's downstairs. But in the ancient records of Egypt, okay, in ancient records of Egypt, the volume one, it does mention some of those campaigns. It does mention that. So Ursur, which means power, like Ursur, Ursur Ma'at Ra. Okay, that is Ramses' name. He's mentioned as the chief of the Magi under Pharaoh Amos in the early 18th dynasty. Now remember, Amos is the founder. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's the founder of the 18th dynasty. So that is the grand age. That's the grand period where we have Hatshepsut, Tutmosis III, um, Amenhotep the Great, Amenhotep the Third, to King Tut. So that was that dynasty. Okay, he helped organize Magi units to secure Waset and the necropolis. So this wasn't the first time the you know the when in the 25th dynasty was not the first time where the Magi was used to secure Waset and the necropolis. It happened before. Okay. Now we have Mai Hepri. Okay. Though not explicitly called a Magi chief in this 18th dynasty, uh, this nobleman of Nubian descent held elite military roles. He was buried. Get this, he was so influential. He was buried in the Valley of the Kings as a sign of high esteem. Everybody's not buried there. Okay, everybody's not laid to rest there. So he has some influence and some power. Okay, his tomb is located at KV 36. His tomb is located at KV 36. I did a little research on that. Scholars suggest he may have been linked to Magi forces, especially given his heritage and military authority. Now, what do you think? Okay, dealing with this, do you think my Hepri was that guy too? Okay, what do you think? Because he was buried in the Valley of the Kings. What do you think? All right, like and comment below. Because everybody's not buried in Valley of the Kings. Like when we find out about King Tut's real mother, she was buried alongside of Queen Tai and not Nefertiti. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's not laid to rest there. Now, this is his coffin. Okay, this is his coffin. This is what his coffin looks like. And it's pretty cool. Black and gold. Okay, that is nice little combination there. Okay. Now, so our notable chiefs, Jehuti Hotep, Ursur, and Mahepri. If you know of any other ones anymore, let me know. Like and comment below. Let me know. Now, though records are scarce, it's believed that these chiefs had close contact with the viziers, the military high command, and even the king himself in Nubian or Kushite settings. Medjay leadership may have been further intertwined with clan elders, oracle priests, or initiation societies, blending martial command with spiritual insight. By the 25th dynasty, the chiefs of the Magi likely served directly under Kushite kings, the kings like Piye, Shabaka, and Taharqa, ensuring the safety of sacred centers like Gabel, Bakar, and the temples of Amun, and many others. So, their ability to navigate both desert terrain and the royal court protocol made them indispensable bridges between the throne and the front lines. They was a special group. These commanders carried more than swords. They bore sacred oaths, ancestral codes, and the weight of Nubian memory, ensuring that the shield wall behind the throne would never break, even when the empires did. Okay. Now, let me see. Oh, so all right. So the Magi, remember their loyalty. The Magi's loyalty was legendary. Their presence was something. Okay, but unlike fiction, the real Magi were complex agents of sovereignty, blending warfare with wisdom and silence with discipline. The Magi were footnotes in history, not only footnotes, but they were pillars of resistance, holding the line between spiritual order, uh, when spiritual order was under siege. They were descendants of pastoralists and prophets, warriors and watchers bound not to the empire, but to the ancestral vision. Their shield wall behind the throne was not just of iron, it was memory, oath, cosmic discipline, and sacred science. A formation built from faith in the unseen, the loyalty to the divine justice. So as we close this, we prepare to what follows. We're gonna check out the women who wielded the sword and the scepter. So in the next week or so, we're gonna talk about Queen Amani Reines. We mentioned her with the other queens of Nubia, but we're gonna give her own shine by herself, right? So Amani Reines versus Rome, the warrior queen of Kush. So this we dealt with the echoes of Nubia. Okay, this is the echoes of Nubia. This is every Thursday. Check it out. And so, like I said, if you are interested in part one, the Kings of Napata, I will have the video there. And also, if you want to catch up with the Kush and Nubia, the corridor of continuity, I have a playlist. But get this coming up. Mysteries of African cosmology, star codes, now myths, and creation cycles. Yep, yep. That's our next live segment, July 21st. Because in this discussion, in this video, okay, we talked about the ancient mother, crocodiles, regicide rituals, and revenge. We discussed the story of Isis and Ra, right? Check it out, okay? Because in that discussion, we talked about this because in the story between Isis and Ra, she wanted a name. Okay, she wanted a sacred name, and he broke down the solar cycles. Okay, Zephyra at sunrise, Ra at midday, and Ra Atun at sunset, and then Amun Ra the midnight or rebirth. Okay, she wanted to know the name that was hidden, and so he told her. And so check it out. Check it out. We had the discussion. And so it reminds me of the Bakongo cosmogram. Okay. So the fam asked the question: is there a cultural connection between Congo and Kemet or the Nile Valley? Shout out to Library Without Borders. The short answer, as you can see, is yes. Okay. So July 21st, we're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk about some other African cosmologies and stories, but that's gonna be in the mix too. All right, shout out to the fam. All right, now, so July 21st, Mysteries of African Cosmology. Get ready. So here's some books. Here's some books. The Kingdom of Kush, the Napatan and Meroic Empires. The affiliate links are in the description. Egypt Before the Pharaohs. That's a good book. That's a good book. Okay, it goes into the archaeological findings of the 5,000 years before the first dynasty. Really cool, really great. Of course, we have the let me see African. I'm sorry, I can't see that. Ancient African kingdoms of the on the Nile, Nubia, and then Ethiopian and the Ethiopia and the Origins of Civilization by John Jackson. Man, the, you got to read. And the thing is, in order for us to engage in any kind of academic conversation or to pass this information forward, we got to read. We got to research, right? Like I said, the links are in the description. Check them out. And this is our book, The Ethiopians in History by Richard Pankhurst. Some people say this out of date, outdated. I'm waiting on somebody to give me a better alternative. Don't give me a problem and don't have a solution to the problem. All right. And so we are going into this book. Get that book. We will be discussing it. We will be moving through it. It's important, even though this is a podcast, not we talk and we have discussions. It's good to anchor our discussion with a reference, with a source. You see what I'm saying? That's why I use a primary source, and these books are secondary sources. So it's good to anchor our discussion with a book. All right, let's go. So now, of course, here's my book, The Crusades and Jihad in East Africa, Religious Conflicts and Their Impact. Okay. This is my new book. We talked about the medieval ages, what was happening during the age of the Crusades, what was happening in the Nile Valley. All right. Now, so we talked about the kings of Napata, the origins of the Magi, service to the king, commanders of the sacred order, and we talked about some notable Magi priests and the Medjay legacy in African warrior memory. So, like I said, if you're interested in learning more about Kush and Nubia, the corridor of continuity, I got a playlist. If you want to catch up with the Kings of Napata, I will have that video also. Okay, so like I said many times, I'm really grateful that you guys came. Shout out to the fam. We just got to talking about secrets of the Magi, the Kushite warriors who protected the Nubian Pharaohs. Yeah, you listen to King Cam Ujumbe Podcast, and Jube me's message. And today's message is once again the secrets of the Magi, Kushite warriors who protected the Nubian Pharaohs. I will talk to you later.